Hello! Today I'll be analyzing the poem Does It Matter by Siegfried Sassoon. But first, I'll start out by reading the poem out loud. The poem Does It Matter by Siegfried Sassoon questions the government society regarding the issues of war. It talks about what effect war has on the returning soldiers, both mentally and physically, and talks about how the society doesn't see the larger issue with losing different body parts, since they assume that people's respect for the soldiers would be enough. However, like most other poems, this is not emphasized directly, but through a lot of irony and sarcasm. The poem starts with a rhetorical question, which isn't only sarcastic but also puts the reader in a position where they have to choose whether it does or doesn't matter, and to do something about the absurdity of war if it actually does matter. In the first stanza, Sassoon asks with a subtle sarcasm if it makes a difference whether someone loses his legs, since people will still remain kind to him. He also points out some of the things that defines a man, at that time at least, which is seen through the lines, when others come in after hunting to gobble their muffins and eggs, which is a metaphor for manhood, and him concluding that losing his legs will result in him losing what is left of his manhood. The sarcasm becomes even more prominent in the second stanza as the poet asks if it matters if the soldier loses his eyes when there is such splendid work for the blind, and people will always be kind, which is very sarcastic. However, the roughness of Sassoon's sarcasm becomes apparent as he creates the metaphor in which the blindest soldier is compared to having been reduced to plant life. As you sit on the terrace remembering, and turn your face to the light. Continuing his verse, the poet deliberately asks, do they matter, those dreams in the pit? You can drink and forget and be glad, and people will say that you're mad. With the loss of part of his humanity, the soldier can no longer dream of the future. In despair, he will drink and lull himself into a state of nothingness, a state in which no one will accuse him of irrational anger towards war. For they know that you fought for your country, and no one will worry a bit. Of course, in these last two lines, there is a bit of irony, as Sassoon poses the true irrationality. People believe that glorious war warrants any sacrifice. However, the poet's rhetorical question leads the reader to conclude that war is inglorious, and it's not worth the sacrifice of life or becoming shell-shocked. To enforce the sarcasm, Sassoon uses some literary techniques, such as repetition, like for example every time he rhetorically asks, does it matter, since the obvious answer is yes, and imagery, which is seen in the second stanza when it says, does it matter, losing your sight, which on another level indicates that there's more than one way to become blind. The vocabulary is also used to intensify the sarcasm, through words such as splendid in the verse where it says, there's such splendid work for the blind. And by intensifying the statement through the use of splendid, he makes it even more sarcastic and ironic. However, other than the use of intensifying words, the poem doesn't try to make a big deal out of itself. The poem itself sounds a lot like it's just one talking and asking the reader. However, there is some form of metric in the poem, which for example can be seen through the line in the first stanza. The three marked words illustrate all the three stresses in the first line, which gives it some rhythm, which you can hear if you say it out loud. Does it matter losing your legs? Couldn't hear? Let's try another similar sentence. For people will always be kind. I hope you heard it this time. The poem in its entirety doesn't try to be much of a poem, since Sassoon only wants to tell it the way that it really is. Unlike most war poems, this one has nearly nothing to do with the battlefield. No artillery shells dropping, no armies are charging. In fact, it's downright quiet. We don't get a lot of details here, but the most important thing about the setting is that the veteran has come home, where people just don't seem to get it. No matter where he goes, if it's home in the first stanza, work in the second stanza, or the bar in the third stanza, people assume he's doing fine, simply because he's fought for his country and doesn't complain. So if we had to describe the setting in only one word, it would be clueless. The folks on the home front just don't get it, and that's a big problem. A problem Sassoon isn't scared of addressing, which is a big contrast to other great poets, such as Rupert Brooke, that actually dignifies warfare without consideration of the veterans and their mental and physical state after they return home. The purpose of the poem is to show how in reality veterans feel once they return from war, how other people don't understand or care about the trauma they might have experienced and instead dignify them and their damages, despite the fact that the veterans feel hurt and shell-shocked. The poem wants people to understand that even though the soldiers might smile and laugh, they are in pain, stuck between memories and the fading reality.
Created using Powtoon.